What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of NJ Healthy Heat. Today, I have a special guest, Nick Gruener. He is a Harvard graduate and also a former professional baseball player with the Baltimore Orioles. He's going to come on and talk about his journey from high school to getting recruited. I know a lot of the guys that are watching this are high academic guys and want to go to a high academic school or even an Ivy League school. So this is going to be great information. And for those that don't really care and don't care to go to high academic schools, it'll be great to hear his transition from college into pro baseball. So wherever you are in your journey, you're going to get a ton of value for this, and I hope that you stick around and watch this. So without further ado, Nick, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it. I think that people know kind of a little bit about your backstory. So with the first question, man, I'm just going to kick it off. When did you realize that playing college baseball was a real possibility, and how'd you know to start preparing for it in high school? Like, what time did you know to start preparing for it in high school?
I should preface this with saying I'm pretty sure I rode bench for the majority of my baseball career. I don't think I actually started to be an actual baseball player until my freshman year of high school. And that's probably just as a result of a growth spurt. I was small and useless for most of middle school. And I came into high school and I was throwing all right. I was probably like low 80s as a freshman, maybe like 80, 81. And the high school coaches were like, yeah, go play outfield, figure it out. And then all of a sudden, like sophomore year, I vividly remember this. I was like playing center field and the ball was hit to the fence. It was a gigantic field. And I threw it from like the center field fence to like home plate. And the coaches were like, what are you doing in the outfield? Like, you should be on the mound. So that was like my transition to like being an actual pitcher. They just threw me on a mound and tried to figure out if I could throw it over the strike zone. And I basically just developed into a pitcher from there and continued playing like the outfield throughout high school. But I think it was predominantly the focus was going to be on pitching. And it really wasn't until my probably after my sophomore year playing summer ball. I never did any of the perfect game stuff. I honestly didn't even know what it was at the time. I knew people did it. I didn't really know what it was. I just
I
played on
didn't
my
even know anything about it either. So you're not
yeah,
alone.
man. Like that just wasn't my jam. But I played on some pretty sweet. I was playing in Miami. That's where I played high school, and I happened to be on an incredible summer team called the Legends. So some people might know Nestor Cortez in the World Series. He was on that team with me. There was Zach.
Yes,
Yeah, he looked exactly the same in high school. Um, but it wasn't until we were playing summer ball that coaches started seeing us, because no one really went to public high school baseball games, at least not mine. Think that was the exposure that I needed, certainly in high school. And I just happened to be at a random game. We were somewhere in the middle of Florida playing pitching, and the Harvard coach happened to be there, and like just came over to me after the game. Says, hey, saw you pitching. Do you have good grades? I'm not kidding. That's how the conversation went. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I got A's. Like, that is that good? And he goes, yeah, 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 yeah. Do you have any? Like, do you take the SAT yet? And I was no. And he's like, how about the ACT? He's like, no. He goes, all right, you email me once you take one of those. So that was literally what happened then. And in the next year, I went and sat for the ACT. So that was what, junior year. And I emailed him back afterwards. I said, hey, is this good enough? And he goes, I think I can work with that.
oh
so
man.
so honestly, like I took that and I kind of ran with it, right? I didn't immediately say, okay, I was going to Harvard. I actually emailed every other Ivy League coach, and I was just like, hey, I think I might be going here.
Oh
Would you
wow.
guys be interested in talking?
Well, let's
Uh,
pause right there real quick. So
yeah,
we're so trying to go to college. Were you eyeing high academic schools at that point in your
no,
career? Or were you just like, I'm just playing baseball and like whatever happens, happens?
I was not in any. I was a I don't know. I was a dumb high school kid just playing baseball, and like I just made it a point to have good grades because my mom would kill me if I had anything less. And it wasn't until I had that first interaction with the Harvard coach I was like, wow, like this would be insane, you know. Like it was never like on my radar, you know. I was never
Yeah,
like,
being from
I,
Miami, going to a school up in Boston, like why
no,
would?
I wanted to play at or Florida.
Yeah,
Um, and those guys weren't looking at me, and I was like, all right, I'll be the nerd and go up to Harvard, you know.
they were looking at Pete Alonso at the time.
Yeah, exactly. We were the same year. Like I
I know
played
you
him.
were. I played against them.
um, so no, it was not on my radar at all. I just made a point to like have good grades in high school and kind of like rolled with it from there. I mean, I didn't even think about standardized tests until my junior year, and he was like, "Hey, you got to score well on this," and then I didn't do anything but study for that during that. Um, so yeah, was that that was the question, right? What
Yeah,
I should think about?
basically.
Yeah,
And when you started, so once you got, I'm curious about the piece that you said that once you got some interest from Harvard, then you took that interest and started kind of parading yourself around and marketing yourself like, oh, Harvard's looking at me. You guys should also look at me. So walk us through what that thought process was like to take that little bit of interest from Harvard and like stretch it an absolute country mile.
yeah, yeah. Because it was during that same time period, that fall of junior year, right? Yeah, fall. Like the FIU coach came and saw me play that fall in like a game. He's like, "Hey, like I want you to come to FIU," and I was like, I'm not gonna like accept the first offer that I get on the table. So, like I said, I took just the interaction that I had with the Harvard coach, and I emailed all the other.
Before, sorry, so the Harvard coach comes to your game in Florida. You haven't taken the SAT or the ACT at that time. Is or do you start reaching out to Ivy League schools before you even take the SAT and
Yeah,
ACT? And
yeah.
just what is your messaging? You get into that. What does that messaging look like? What are you saying?
I was just like, hey, I'm Nick. I'm in Miami. I wrote the same email, but I'd almost made this mistake. Make sure you change the coach's name when you're emailing the
Yeah,
coaches.
big
um,
mistake. You'd be surprised how many are making that mistake.
yeah. I'm pretty sure I sent the Stanford coach like the Dartmouth coach's name. But I wrote this email. I was like, I'm talking to Harvard right now. I have a 4.0 GPA. I'm ready to sit for my exam. And then I just took a video of a bullpen. And I just attached the bullpen and I made the email very short. I didn't want them to open an email and there was like a freaking essay. They don't have time for that. They're coaching a college baseball team. They want to read an email and say, okay, he's got decent grades. Here's a 30-second video I can watch in 30 seconds and then either put it in my trash or maybe respond, you know? So I just made the short video. I said, and I had the coach's name. I'm talking to Coach Walsh, like, would you guys have any interest? And I always offered, like, I'll come up and meet you, or if you're in the area, I'll drive up to meet you, like making it as easy as possible for them to say yes, as opposed to saying like, will you come down to my game? I'm playing at perfect game at X, Y, and Z, right? It's
Yeah.
always you make someone else's life easier to make it more beneficial for you. So I started emailing those guys, and the Princeton coach emailed me back. He's like, "Yeah, I'm actually going to be at this tournament that you're going to be at soon." I don't remember what it was. It was a game that we were playing somewhere, and that's how that's And that was just because of an email. It's just because I emailed them and said, "Here's my schedule. Here's my
And that was down
schedule.
south.
What's up?" So I
That was
actually
down south, or you were playing up north.
no, this is all in Florida. I don't think I ever played outside of Florida before going to college. So it kind of rolled into next few months, and I flew up and I actually committed to Princeton. I committed to Princeton because they extended the offer before Harvard did. And I emailed the Harvard coach and I said, "Hey, I'm going to Princeton." And he's like, "Oh, wait." Uh, and then, I ended up decommitting from Princeton and going and committing to Harvard. So it was a bit of a tumultuous situation, but it all worked out for the best, I guess, in the end.
what was the ultimate factor in deciding? First off, that's awesome that you had two Ivy League schools that wanted you. Were there any other schools after you threw some interest out from Harvard to them that took the bite, or was it just
Only
Princeton?
three responded. It was just well, it was Harvard and then Princeton and Dartmouth. So
And out of all of the schools you reached out to, how many schools do you think you reached out to compared to how many schools kind of got back to you?
I probably emailed, well, I guess it was all seven of the other Ivy Leagues and then Stanford, maybe Cal. I don't know why, but only like three or four responded. So high rejection rate. And
But
that's
very,
why,
very targeted
yeah,
with who you wanted to go to. Knew it.
yeah. At that point, I was like, all right, if this is a possibility, I don't care what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it happen. Like as soon as I sniffed it, that was the end. I was going to make sure it happened.
And so you get the offer from Princeton, probably great day for you, but then you decommit. So like walk us through what happens on a decommit to one of the greatest schools that our country has to offer.
That was a terrible conversation. I did it like on my baseball field in high school. I got called him. I remember I was standing on the right field line of my upper baseball or of my high school baseball field. And I said, "Hey, I'm so sorry. Like, I really appreciate everything. I'm going to go to Harvard." And he's just like, "What is wrong with you? Like, why did you say yes to us?" Like everything that you would expect someone to say to you when you're doing this. And I just said, "Listen, like, you guys have an amazing baseball program." And they were better. It was a better baseball program to go to Princeton. And I decided that the Harvard name was better for my future. Even though they're probably equivocal, I kind of wanted to take the best quote unquote that I could at the time. And that's what I thought it was. So whatever, if that was a naive decision, whatever, so make it. But that was literally the logic behind it. I was like, this one sounds better, I guess.
Yeah. Harvard invented Facebook, and I don't know what Princeton's done. So I think you got the win there. When you were in high school and you started to get some traction, what was the physique looking like? What was the stuff looking like? I looked you up in high school. You did start to hit, some really good years in junior year and senior year for high school. You started to strike a lot of guys out. You started to become like the guy on your baseball team. But is that because your team wasn't that great, or were you just like so much better than everybody else? Like, walk us through who, junior year of high school Nick was from an ability standpoint.
The summer leading into my junior year, which is kind of when all of this was materializing, was when I really changed how I thought about baseball as a gateway to my future. Because I realized that it was going to be able to open opportunities that my life wouldn't have had otherwise, right? Like I wouldn't have sniffed getting into Harvard just applying on my own, right? So when I took that into account, I was like, all right, I'm going to become the best physical athlete that I can be at this stage of my pubic life, and I took the bus to the gym every day after school because we went out. Our practice didn't start till later, and we got out of school pretty early. We got out at like 2, so I'd go to the gym. I take the bus to the gym after school, and then I'd go from the gym to practice. And I did that every day for 6 months. And like I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like Googling things that weren't like Instagram,
Yeah.
influencers at the gym or like training videos or whatever, like I was just kind of winging it. But I thought that if I could make myself the best athlete in whatever terms that I personally thought that meant, it gave me a better chance of being a better pitcher. And I grew, I probably put on like 15 pounds during that time frame, almost all on my legs, because that was the first time I ever touched, doing squats or whatever. Right? We didn't have a weightlifting program in high school. So that's when I really started to see my velocity increase too. I probably started getting up to like 87, 88 my junior year. It wasn't until my senior year that I was throwing like close to 90. So once I kind of figured all that out, then I focused all my attention on the technicals. I was pretty lucky that my high school pitching coach also pitched in the big leagues, so he actually was useful and like could help me learn how to pitch. Because, like I said, I went from being an outfielder to just sitting on the mound and trying to throw hard. So someone actually help you focus all the attention that I wanted to put on baseball in the right place, in addition to what I was doing outside of the field, I think is really what helped everything kind of materialize in the end.
Definitely. So I think I missed it a little bit, but were you throwing mid to upper 80s like junior year in high school season, or the mid to upper 80s in that summer leading into
No,
senior?
it wasn't until the actual season after I finished training through the fall,
Oh, the
going into
fall of what, your
my
senior year?
junior year.
Junior year
Yeah.
started to throw harder. So a combination of getting into the weight room for the first time, and then what was like throwing? What did throwing look like? Obviously, everybody has like their perfect throwing routines nowadays, and like you're to the T of like what you should be doing. But back then, like you and I mean, it just sounds so weird saying because we're still not that old, but like literally just like 15, 20, like 15 years ago, like we didn't know what throwing plans were. Like you just showed up to the field and just like, who wants the long toss? My arm feels decent today. I'll go with you. Like, what was it looking
That's
like?
literally that's all we could do. I didn't know anything about like what the TRX bands, what are the things, the crossover bands, all that
J
stuff.
bands, yeah.
Dude, I didn't even know what that was called until I got to college. So in high school, I just long tossed as often as I could. That was the only thing that I knew. I was like, if I could throw the ball further, then I could probably throw it harder at a closer distance.
That's
Right.
Harvard teaching right there. I mean, no, that's why they let you in there. That makes a ton of sense, bro.
Um, so I did not. I mean, I wish I had some extensive knowledge to extend there, but no, it was like long toss regimen and bullpens, and that was it. Like I don't have any science on throwing programs for sure.
No, no, not looking for it either. Just want to understand, everybody has their own come up and their own makeup and how they went about their training. A lot of guys just, did what you did, which is, you know, worked out for a lot of people. So once you finished up your junior year, when was it the moment that you were like, all right, I'm actually really, really getting looked at here seriously?
Yeah, it was definitely my junior year, because that's when I think that was when I had my first like actual good season as a pitcher. And I mean, for what it's worth, South Florida and Miami high school baseball is like really good. It's just like everyone's really good. So when you happen to perform well against all these kids that are going, to D1 commits to all the Florida schools, and not to mention all the schools up and down the coast and the South, like kids were good. So
Yeah.
as soon as I realized that, like, okay, I'm okay, like I don't suck anymore, like I can kind of like play well, that's when I took myself more seriously. That's when I was like, that's like, in addition to, like I said, the weight room, the training with our pitching coach, focusing on actually how to pitch, there is an aspect of self-confidence that once you realize that, like, sometimes like things work out, like there are ways to make sure those things happen more often in the future, right? And that's focus, that's work ethic, and that's whatever you like want it to be. But as soon as you sniff something, it's like it's insatiable, right? Like you want it to happen more and more and more. So I think that's all you need. Is you need that one little taste of, I'm okay, I might actually be good at this, and then you work harder. But everyone needs a little kick in the butt sometimes, I think.
Yeah, need the kick in the butt, but also, for a lot of the kids and even the guys who are climbing up in the minor leagues like we used to, like you also need that reassurance that you're good enough and you belong there. I think that's one of the hardest feelings to search for as a baseball player because it is such a game of failure and you're constantly in this like negativity of like not hitting your goals or maybe not having the success that you want. You're just constantly like, dude, do I even belong here? And so I guess what, your senior year, your junior year, you were just like, finally, I really belong here, and you were able to just relax. What did that do to your game the moment
Oh,
that?
as soon as the confidence there, it's just like, I mean, like as soon as you like walk onto the mound and like you look at these guys walking in the batter box and you're like, dude, you're a host, like you have no chance. Like that mentality, it like takes all the pitching to like the next level. You sit there and you see guys walk out and you're like, damn, that guy's big, dude. You start having any of those thoughts go in your mind, like that's it. Pitching's a mentality game, right? I used to have like on my inside of my glove and it's in the swear words like they're effed, like
Yeah.
I would look down at that. I think you saw that glove. I think I had that
Yeah.
when I showed up to spring training, right? And that was it, because I didn't have anything else. I was 5'10, I wasn't a big dude. I was like, I have to like think of ways to make myself better than these people. And it's going to be a combination of both my physical ability and my mental ability. Because when someone hits a 400 bomb off you, you got to like strike out the next three guys and not cry about it, right? So half of pitching's mental.
Definitely. So you mentioned that you're 5'10". What was the weight looking like in high school? Where were you at?
Dude, I was like a buck 60, 70. I think it wasn't until college that I went up to like 180, 190. So I was, I wasn't big. That's for sure.
So before we move into the college years, once you get into there, because those are some fun years, I'm sure. When you were in high school, when you had, I don't know how much, difficulties you had on the mound, but when you had difficulties in high school, what is something that you turned to help you get back on the right track mentally?
High school, it was my coach. Dude, like he would, if he saw me walk off the mound and like my head was hung, he would like, it wasn't yelling, it was just like constructive, like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're so much better than these guys. Like, stop pouting, stop. The only tolerance our team had, like, you could suck as much as you wanted, but if you had any signs of like self pity or like pouting or like thinking I stink, like, that's when you got reamed. Like, no one cared if you played poorly. They cared if you acted like you were playing poorly. And I think the best thing for us was like, we knew we were going to have bad games, right? We knew we weren't going to, I wasn't going to throw a no hitter. I wasn't going to throw, a 1 run game every time. But if I could focus on the batters, if I could focus on the innings, I was like, I pitch really well to that batter. I pitch really well in that inning. This one batter might have had a good, double off me or whatever, but the next two batters I did very well. You have to focus on all the things that you did right, or else all the things that went wrong are just going to eat you away. And that's like what deteriorates your confidence. That's what deteriorates your future ability. And everything that I was taught to focus on was everything that I was doing right, which is sometimes hard to, find. Sometimes you're just like, you can't find those pieces, but that's what I had to focus on. And that's what we were encouraged to always focus on.
Yeah, sounds like you had a great coach, man.
He was the best. He's still one of my closest friends, honestly.
Yeah, not a lot of people are blessed with that to have a good high school coach. I was fortunately blessed to also have a really good high school coach who knew what he was doing. Also played a little pro ball, so that helped. But a lot of I've talked to a lot of high school coaches, and I'm like, dude, you are doing these kids a disservice just by showing up. I think they would be I think they might be better if you just like didn't show up. They'd probably function a little bit. Anyways, they're doing the Lord's work though. They're helping kids out. You can't knock that. But so moving on to college, right? So you're feeling like the big bad senior. You're striking everybody out, and then all of a sudden, boom, the calendar turns. It's time to grow up, and you show up to a 4-year university, a D1 at that, a high academic at that. What is walking on campus first semester feeling like for Nick Gruener?
Dude, I thought I was hot shit, man. Like I was like, man, I'm playing baseball here. This is awesome. Like the team was full of the coolest guys that I've ever met. Mostly because just like they're older than you, and like you think
Yeah.
everyone that's older than you is cool, right? And then I got my ass handed to me pitching. I mean, I just like was so humbled my freshman year. I mean, that was just like, which is funny because like I showed up and that I actually became one of the four starters like in the rotation that year, and like that's like a huge deal for a freshman to do that, and it just did not work out. I did not pitch very well. I mean, I'm totally honest. It was a huge like confidence crusher, and like everything I just spoke about like thinking about things going right, like nothing was going right for me. And I was like, man, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm not like not working as hard as everyone else. I'm not like a worse pitcher than I was in high school. I'm the same person. I'm actually gained weight. I'm throwing harder. Like, what is wrong? And honestly, this is the same thing you realize when you go from college to pro ball. I'm like, it's the next level. Everyone's as good as you. right? Like everyone is there because they were as good as you were last year. So your next step is not being the same pitcher as you were last year. You have to figure out how to be better, right? And better doesn't mean throw harder, by the way. Like that is like 10% of the equation. Guys in the big leagues who throw 88, right? It's like
Nick Bentley. He was on here earlier.
Nicky V. Nick was my roommate in case anyone watched this episode. But that's when I had to learn how to pitch, right? In high school, I could throw hard. Most people would miss, and I could throw some curveballs, which they would definitely miss. And like that was high school, right? When you show up to college, people hit 90 miles an hour like it's ice cream, right? Like that's no big deal to anyone anymore. So that's when you actually had to learn how to pitch. And I didn't know how to do that, right? I was completely relearning what the job actually meant through my whole freshman year. And that's kind of where the transition is, both from high school to college, and then again from college to the minor leagues. But that's a very eye-opening situation of realizing that whatever you were before is not good enough anymore. Like you're good, but it's not good enough anymore. You got to be better.
So when talent met talent, right, and you
Yeah.
came there, you're just like everybody's good, and you got creamed and you got your ass handed to you, just like most freshmen do, unless you're just like God's gift to baseball. What was it that you were doing in your daily life, or what were you starting to tweak within your own routines that started to help you take that next step forward and forward that was starting to, again, once again, separate you from the rest of the pack that ultimately led you to be drafted? But obviously, it was that 4 years of building something new in yourself. So, like, what were you doing that helped separate you?
It took 2 years for me to figure out what was going on. I mean, my daily life was pretty stacked. Like I woke up, I went to class from 8 to noon, and then I had lunch, and then I went to baseball practice from 1 to 6, 1 to 6:30, whatever. Go eat dinner, and then I was in the library from 8 to 11 or 8 to midnight, and then I went to bed and had to do it again. So like life was very structured, and there was not a lot of time to like figure out like where your priorities are supposed to lie. Like clearly you're just trying to like survive in school, first of all, because now you're in college and everything is just 10x harder than cruising through high school. Now you're playing baseball where everyone is as good or better than you, so you have to figure out how to do that. And then you also have to like go study and like actually complete your coursework, which was another eye opener for me. I was like, wow, there's a lot of studying that goes along with this school thing. So my freshman year was like I was just lost because I had to figure out how to like manage all of that. Sophomore year, I came back and I put more emphasis on school, honestly. Like, and I mean, anyone could look up my sophomore baseball stats; they were not good, and that's because I was focusing on not failing out. I mean, school was hard, and I took 2 years, but those were like two very different years. For freshman year was like I have no idea what's going on. Sophomore year was I need to figure out this school thing, and then I came back junior year and I was like, all right, I know how to manage the school. How am I going to be the best baseball player on the team now? And it was my junior year, the combination of the summer going into junior year, junior fall, where like that's where I kind of peaked as an athlete. And that was because I kind of had to figure out how to like make school work at that point. So now I was like, all right, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. for class, and then from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., how do I maximize out of being the best baseball player? My junior fall, going into junior spring, I like I think I only drank on like one day a week or once every 2 weeks. I mean, I just cut it out. I was
Yeah.
like, this is not good. If I'm going to be like an actual baseball player and like wake up and train all
A
day
lot,
and
especially with what were y'all doing, like 6, 7 a.m. weights at some points in the
dude,
fall.
like during the winter, we're up at 5 a.m. It was terrible.
Yeah.
but like you can't do that like in the state that the hungover college kid might
Can't
be
do.
in.
I mean, you
Um,
can, but you don't want to.
yeah, so like there were sacrifices, and like that would my junior year, like especially during the spring, I didn't like sniff a party in the spring. Like it was like baseball season, and like no friends. It was the baseball team, and like that was it. And honestly, I'm pretty sure that's a huge contributor to like what helped in the long run. Because like I said, I figured out the school, and now my priority was figuring out the baseball that whole year and focusing my entire energy on that, and like not letting the other college distractions, which there are lots of distractions in college.
It's like
Um,
high school times a million.
yeah, man, like it is next level of figuring out how to prioritize your life when you have no like responsibilities other than some
I
homework
would
and
say that it's no responsibilities, but that you're the one who sets the
who
foundation.
has to like yeah like realize what they are, you know.
Yeah. Like you get to decide what time you go to bed. It's not like your parents like, hey, it's probably time to go to bed. It's like, dude, I can stay up as late as I need to or want to.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's
So
tough.
I think there was a mental transition from when I decided I wanted to be a baseball player. And it was during that time frame of my junior year.
Yeah. So you talk about the sacrifice spring season, becoming like your peak athletic build. Go deeper into that on, what it really took and what you had to really sacrifice. Because I think a lot of people, myself included, when I was in high school or even in college, like we like to think we know what the sacrifice is to be, not only a collegiate athlete, but now somebody who's starting to train for a profession in baseball. Like that is another step, especially again, if you're not God's gift to baseball and you have to like literally work day in and day out tirelessly while going to classes, while, studying all of these things, while maybe even trying to keep some social life. Like what really are the biggest sacrifices that you think you've had to make within your own baseball career, during your college time?
I mean, it was the fun on the weekends. Honestly, like at a certain point, like you have to real like you could go, right? Go and have like see your friends in public and like, but the drinking is just like it crushes your body, like from the ability to recover, from the ability to like perform. It is like the single worst alcohol is the single worst thing that you can put in your body as an athlete. And I remember in addition to that, like actually realizing that like diet mattered. And that was probably my junior year was the first time that not only was like, okay, don't eat like crap, but actually how do you like structure your macros and increase your caloric intake so that you can build muscle. Right. Everyone like talks about like, oh, have, I don't know, 5 small meals a day or like don't snack after 9 p.m. Like I didn't care about any of that. I was like, how the hell am I going to eat 4,000 calories a day so that like when we're doing like our heavy squat days, my legs can actually like soak up and metabolize the protein that I'm putting in my body. So otherwise, it's all a wash, right? If you're caloric deficit and you're working out, your body's not going to do anything. You're just going to be sore and your body's going to be angry at you. So that was the first time where I kind of learned how to eat properly. And it, like I said, it's not about not eating crap. It's about actually counting the calories and like making sure you're taking in more calories so that you can produce like larger muscle mass and like have a metabolism that's firing on all cylinders at all time. And these were all things that I had to learn. And we had a dietitian on campus, and I like went and talked to her. I was like, listen, like I'm 190 pounds. How do I get to 200? You know, and we like walked through like what needed to happen. She's like, well, you're already doing the weight training. She's like, what are you eating? And I was like, I don't know, like a chicken breast and some rice at lunch. And she's like, cool, have 3 chicken breasts and 2 cups of rice instead. And like you start working your way up. Like you can't do it in one day. It's not like you're gonna like triple what you're eating in one day. But over a period of time, you start increasing one meal, you start increasing a second meal, and then you build up to where like all of a sudden you're starving, even though you just had 2,000 calories. So learning how to properly nourish yourself is extremely important. And I think a lot of people kind of say that they're doing it, but to actually do it is like it's hard. You have to like track it. You have to, like I had an app. I had like the Under Armour My Health app or whatever it used to be called. And like you punch in your calories that you're eating and it tracked it for you.
If you're watching this, we don't need Under Armour. We got NJ Healthy Heat. We got dietitian Dana. We appreciate you. We
There you
actually
go.
hired a dietitian in here, sports dietitian, working with college and pro athletes. She is amazing. She's helping some of these guys right now. I think you and I are in the same boat that the moment that my career started to really take a turn for the better is when I started really paying attention to what I was putting into my body and how it made me feel, and how fast I was able to actually turn my, you know, efforts in the weight room into strength, size, pounds on the scale, and then ultimately, performance output on the field. It's crazy how it just like stacks on top of each other quietly in the background of your life. You're just like, oh shoot, like 6 months went by and like I did all the right things and now I'm pretty good at baseball. Like I'm better at baseball now than I was 6 months ago. Even though like my training, like the way that I hit didn't really change much. I don't know if you changed anything in your like actual baseball training, but for me, not a lot changed in like what I was doing. It was the stuff around it that changed and like got a little bit more fine-tuned.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, nice. So, at what point in your college career then did you realize like I got a real shot at getting drafted here?
It was one game. It was
Florida game?
it was
Heard about
actually
Florida
it
game.
was the game before our opening game. Our opening series my junior year was against Wake Forest, and
Before they were good.
yeah, yeah, it was the turf field. It was
Oh yeah.
freezing, uh, and I pitched really well. And I was like, okay, like that's cool. My junior year is off to a good start. And then the following series was at Florida, and they were the number one team in the country at the time. And it was a joke that we were playing them. I mean, like in all honesty, I
Oh, so
remember
they were good at the time.
they were number one.
They were very good. I thought they weren't that good at that point.
No, the team that we played that weekend was Pete Alonso, AJ Puck. Um,
But it was not Buddy Reed. What was his name? Reed in the outfield.
yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah. I was
Anyway, beside the point, they were stacked. And our first game we lost, I don't know, 18 runs. Second game we lost like 12-1 or 12-3.
Buddy Reed. Sorry.
Um, yeah, and then I pitched the third game, and it's actually hilarious that our coach decided to put me on the third game because we thought that'd be the best chance of winning because it'd be against their third best pitcher. But that was AJ Puck, so that was kind of a blown,
Yeah. Yeah.
strategy.
Those that don't know,
Um,
go look him up. He's a giant 6'7" lefty.
yeah, they were so good, but that we lost by it was 3-1. Like it was an actual baseball game. And after that, I was like, okay, well, I seem to do fairly well against the best baseball team in the country. You know, Statistically speaking, I should be able to do fairly well against the other teams in the country. So let's like see what happens then. And that's when I got back to campus, and I think I got started getting the letters in the mail because every scout was at that game because everyone wanted to draft everyone on that team. And so it was like total residual luck on my end that I happened to pitch well at that series.
How it is, man. Hey, you got to
Yeah,
be prepared for that moment, man. It wasn't luck because all the stuff that you had been doing leading up to that point, not going to the parties, getting your diet right, adding the 10 pounds, getting the strength going, like it all led to that moment so that you could be prepared. And like you just don't know sometimes in your baseball career when that moment is going to happen. And like you're either prepared or you're not. And like you
yeah,
can't get prepared the night before. Like you got to be doing it over and over and over again.
that was the most fun baseball game I've ever had. It's also the hardest I ever threw. I was throwing like 94, 95. And I was like, I have no idea what's going on here. Like, it's just like almost like a shock. You're like, wow, this is like really cool, whatever's going on right now. But that's when I like the letters started coming, and people eventually start receiving these. But it's basically just a questionnaire that you get in the mail, and it has the MLB team's logo on it, and it's basically ask you to fill out all your information and ask if you would be interested in entering the draft, and you mail it back in.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. So that was after that game that those things started to roll on, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And depending on what school you go to, it automatically makes you the coolest kid on the team. Like unless you're going to, Wake Forest and then like it's like, oh, you only got two only 2 teams are interested. I got all 30.
Yeah.
Everyone's before I open it up to the question and answer for the group, one of the cooler things that I think that you've done that some of the guys might be interested in hearing is the internship that you had going into the draft. Talk about what that first year in pro ball was like. Typically, how it goes for everybody out there, like you get drafted, and then for me, we were in the same draft class. 2-3 days later, I'm on a plane getting picked up, and then 2 or 3 days later after that, like I'm playing in my first baseball game as a professional. So within like a freaking 7 to 10 day window, you're playing baseball. However, that is not how Nick Gruener's kind of life went. He took a different route, a route that I've yet to see before or heard anything after. So tell us about what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, so my junior summer, so the summer that you normally get drafted in, I was interning in New York on a trading floor of one of the banks. And the reason I had opted to do that instead of play summer ball, because I know everyone plays summer ball in college, I did it myself. I played in the Northwoods League for both my freshman summer and my sophomore summer. Go Mallards. And after that, I knew that, despite baseball going well and things seem to be going on the right track, I valued my future. And quite honestly, I was very realistic of the fact that baseball doesn't work out for everyone, even if you get drafted. Like I was very realistic of the fact that the percentage of people who make it is very low. And I wanted an insurance policy. So my coach was furious with me. I mean, this was like not an easy thing that I basically just went out and did, but I was like, listen, I'm not playing this summer. I'm going to do this internship so that I'll have a job offer in case baseball doesn't work out. And, that's just not the mentality of college coaches. It's like you're playing and then you're playing for me. Yeah. Like that's just not how it works. And I was like, listen, man, I get it, but this is my life we're talking about. And like I was dead set on having just something on my resume that wasn't baseball because don't get me wrong, every interview I've had in the past 10 years, everyone's only wanted to talk about baseball, right? Yeah. But the only reason that's the case is because I had an internship to get the first job in the first place. So the emphasis I can put on like real world work experience and like being a like well-rounded person that's not just entirely focused on baseball is like invaluable. And I these are all the things I was laying out to him at the time. I was like, I'm going to go do this. I will be playing baseball in the future with you, which turned out not to be the case because I got drafted. So I literally got drafted like while I was like at work, and I was like, oh God, that's cool. So so the scout like flew into New York and he's like with my contract and everything. He's like, so like you said, get you on a plane, get you down to start playing. And I was like, I'm not gonna go yet. He goes, what are you talking about?
I know that you worked your entire life and that kid's freaking worked for 20 years to get to this point, but no thanks.
I was like, I really appreciate it. Like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me in terms of my baseball career, but I need to finish this internship so that I have a life after baseball. And like, they didn't know what to do with that. I mean, he like went back to Baltimore. Like, we went back and forth for a week, and then like I was pretty clear that I wasn't coming, they were like, okay, show up to spring training next year. Here's your contract. Like, see you then. And I was like, oh my God, it worked.
That's hilarious. I think that's one of the funnier stories that you'll hear in all of baseball. Because again, that's one of the rarest things that I've heard. And then I'll tell you from our side, me being the idiot that didn't have a freaking internship and I'm just going getting drafted with everybody else. We were just like, who's this mysterious guy that just like declined to come? And it was just like this ghost figure for like a month, 2.5 months. And we were just like, who the hell is this guy? And then you finally meet him, in spring training the next year. So it's one of the funnier things that I think. So appreciate you sharing that. I want to go ahead and open it up to some questions here. to some of the guys, this is a great time for them to be able to learn. We've got some college guys in here. We've got some freshmen in high school in here. We've got some seniors in high school getting ready for theirs, juniors. Like, open it up, guys. This is your time to pick his brain. Nothing's really off the table here.
Uh, do you think like when you made the jump from, throwing like high 80s, maybe touching 90 to, 94, 95, do you think that was largely, in what you were eating and you were putting on mass and muscle, or do you think it was a change in mechanics?
Um, I don't think I changed my mechanics between freshman and college, any of that time period. It wasn't until I was playing with Matt that like I started messing around with a bunch of stuff that definitely was not the right answer. But no, everything that worked out in terms of velocity was diet and weight training. I mean, I'm not kidding. I had like one of those mass gainer powders that's like 500 to 700 calories or whatever, and it's like a disgusting. Like I was drinking two of those a day. I was eating as much as I could in the dining hall. Like I was determined to gain weight, like whatever. Like because I didn't know at the time. I just thought that was what was going to help. Like luckily, like it did in the long run, but it was a function of both. I was already doing the weightlifting. You're forced to do the weightlifting in college, right? It's part of your practice and schedule and whatever. But it wasn't until I ate a lot and of the right stuff that like all of the weightlifting actually transitioned into something. Otherwise you're just sore, right? If you can't like actually supplement what you're working out to achieve, which in this case involves the right food. That's certainly what helped, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I was just bigger. I was an extra 15 pounds behind the ball, right? That like helps.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One thing I'll say, Wes, is that when I met Nick, even though he was still 5'10", I don't think had you grown anymore? Were you still 5'10"?
Still
Five
the
ten?
same.
Yeah, 5'10". This is really weird to say, but like the dude had just like a huge ass, which was just like from freaking squatting. Like, let's just call a spade, it, dude. Like the legs were ginormous. Dude had a six pack. Like, dude came in looking like a freaking professional baseball player. He didn't come in looking like slop. And you were just like, yeah, that's what a professional baseball player at 5'10" looks like. Huge legs and a rocked up core. So great question though.
Yeah.
I know you got other questions in there.
Me?
Oh yeah, why not? You're trying to go to a high academic school, why not?
I mean, he touched on most of the process. I mean, I don't have that many questions.
All right, cool. Never mind then. Anybody else out there got questions? Nah, guess not. Cool.
I think the emails, I don't know if people still do this anymore. Like I was just doing it because I thought it was the right thing to do. But the email situation for me was just like, how do I make this the most concise but informative and helpful for the coach all at one time, right? So like I said, it was, hi, I'm Nick. I live here. I'm a pitcher. I throw this hard, and it's always inflated, but it's beside the point. And
I don't
uh,
think I like the strategy of doing it the other way. Like saying if you throw a certain amount or you throw a certain speed, first off, coaches are gonna know if you're inflating it because they're not dumb. Especially because of today's world, Nick, where like you have to send in video basically of you throwing it to a gun. Like no coach wants to see you just throwing a bullpen and then just being like, yeah, that was 88.
that's awesome. I didn't have a radar gun.
Exactly. Like there weren't radar, but nowadays like everybody pretty much has a radar gun in some capacity. But
All right, even better. So you don't have to say it. Like, here's my video. I'm a good pitcher. Here are my stats. Here are my grades. Like I love to talk. And honestly, like I don't know if like where you're looking at going to school, but it's like it's kind of hard for coaches to fill teams on like on academic schools because they have to have a weighted average of the general admission for that school. So like if you take like Harvard, for example, if you have a general population that has an average GPA of 4.0, whatever not the weighted BS, just like regular average 4.0. SAT scores, I don't know, 1,500. I don't know what it's out of anymore. And like X, Y, and Z curriculars, the coach has to build a team of, I don't know, there were 7 guys in my class who average to whatever that is, right? So if they bring in one guy who has a 4.0 and a 1,500, that guy's the average. If they bring in some guy with a 3.5 and a 1,300, then they also have to go bring someone in who has a perfect SAT score or something to bring the average back for the incoming class. So it's actually like not easy for coaches to fill teams because they have to have this, they call it the academic index for their teams. And you never know, like at any point in time, like I talked to some kid who was like super smart, and the coach was like, dude, I need a kid that has like sick grades on my roster right now to bring up my average. And the kid got picked up, right? Or same thing with like, I talked to another kid and he was sick at baseball. And the coach was like, you know what? I got some guys that will like balance you out. Like, I think I can get you in. So it's totally dependent on like what the coach is trying to solve for at that given like any point in time during their recruiting process. And you never know what they're trying to solve for at that time. So I'm pretty sure I was on the low end of the average, and someone helped me out. But it's interesting. I don't envy their process of trying to fill their teams.
What was the like recruiting timeline like for you at Harvard? Like from the moment that they showed interest to the moment that they offered you?
It was after my junior year. So I went into pitching my senior year knowing I was going to college, but that didn't happen until my senior fall because there's no like early like commitment to whatever you still have to get into the school. So you kind of just roll in with everyone else. I think they had like, what is it called? Early admission or early deadline, where you apply early. What's that called? Early decision?
Yeah, early admission.
Yeah, whatever that is. So like you could apply to that. But the coaches couldn't actually extend you real offers, like tangible real offers, until you got through that early admission or early deadline, whatever it's called. So I actually didn't know until like the winter of my senior year, which was a little precarious, but thankfully it worked out.
So just to wrap it all up and put a nice bow on it, like what overall, giving it to high school kids and then giving it to the college guys, would you give advice on? Just your general advice on how to go about their business and how to get to a level of, either getting to their D1 school or dream school or getting drafted. I don't know who's going to watch this, but everybody's going to be on some similar path, but all at different points. What would your advice be to them?
At any point in time, I think there's 2 important things. One is to be have goals that exceed your ability, right? For me, it was in high school. I was like, I'm going to try to get into Harvard. I have no idea if that's possible, but I'm going to do everything in my physical and mental capacity to get there. That was my goal that exceeded my ability, right? And then once I was there, I think the second piece to everyone's journey is to also be realistic with yourself. I've seen too many kids go and get drafted out of high school and then they get let go after 2 years, and then like that's it. You didn't go to college, right? And then you're just left out to like fend for yourself in the world, and the world's very hard. So I mean, I'm probably the wrong person to talk to when people like ask about getting drafted out of high school, but like unless you're a first round pick, second round pick, getting like $1 million, where the team's gonna be forced to like play you and move you because they invested a lot of money in you. I just hope that people take into consideration their futures and how difficult it is to have a baseball career, and that you're cognizant of the fact that you're going to have a life after baseball, and to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. I know a lot of people have these opportunities with, I don't even know how NIL works. That's a foreign concept to me. But I think there's tangible things to learn out of things like that. Like actually how businesses are run, right? Why is it advantageous for a company to be paying you? Why is it advantageous for you to be getting money? You always should be thinking about like why things that are happening around you are the way they are. I think it's just something that I've always tried to, take into my daily life, like always questioning what's going on because it makes you learn and it forces you to think. That's kind of like how I was in college. I was like, baseball seems awesome after college. I have no idea if I'm gonna be good enough to play this for the rest of my life, and I'm gonna try to have a backup plan. And that's just because of I was realistic with who I was as a person. So I think those are my two things. Set goals that exceed your expectations, and then also be realistic about how scary the world is.
Yeah, it's a lot, fellas. That's an incredible, story right there, man. I really appreciate you dropping some knowledge bomb for these guys. Can't tell you enough how much I'm grateful for you to just even be on this screen right now having this conversation. But what I always tell people is that the knowledge that you just shared with these guys, hopefully they take it, implement into their lives, and they share a little bit of the knowledge with somebody else. And now, Nick Gruener's message has gone deeper and deeper, and there's a ripple effect to, just this conversation. So I know that somebody out there will take what you've said today and use it to help drive them a little bit further. And if that's all we get, that's something I'm gonna lay my head out night and be happy about. So
I'll take it. I'll take it.